Kimberley, thank you so much for joining me today. I am super excited for this conversation. I know you're going to inspire so many other wedding businesses. So to kick us off, can you tell me who you are, where you are, and what your wedding business is?
Sure. So I'm Kimberley Bagger. I'm based in London, and my wedding business is called the Little Wedding Creche. And we have little sub businesses within that: the Little House Creche, the London Hotel Nannies, and the premise of the business is to provide wedding and event childcare both in the UK and internationally.
Incredible. And I'm going to unpack some of your story during our conversation today. How did you get into the wedding industry? Was this something you always dreamed of? Have you always been in love with weddings? Or how did this happen?
Okay, so really randomly, I've always been in business, and I've been in business since I was 18, various businesses, mainly in the childcare space. But actually, funny story, when I was 18, when I found out how to buy domains, I actually randomly bought a domain name that was Kimberley Rose Weddings. My name doesn't have Rose in it, but it was like as if maybe I just watched the wedding planner or something, but I was like, I want to be in weddings. Anyway, fast forward, 18 years into business, I then finally started my wedding business. And it really came out of the fact that I ran a business for around 10 years in a particular space, which was in childcare events. So I did children's parties, I had a nursery, I had a play centre, and I lost that business after having it for 10 years. And sort of licked my wounds for a bit. I think people call it like entrepreneur's grief or something. And then I thought to myself, after I'd been a bit like, ooh, I thought, what can I do next? And then I took the best parts of that business. So the thing that I was really experienced in, which was the childcare and the events part that I loved, and I sort of merged them together and came up with a Little Wedding Creche. And then one day just went on a domain search and bought the domain, and then it all sort of snowballed from there.
Wow. And people will look at your business today and they'll see you jetting off to private islands with your team and working in five-star hotels. And they might look at you and say, well, Kimberley, it's okay for you because you're working in the luxury market and you have all these incredible weddings coming to you. Has your journey been an overnight success? Did you go from zero to private islands overnight?
No, 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 not at all. So really and truly, when I first started the weddings, it was like, how can I just get a wedding? And it was like, just a bums on seats sort of thing. I just want to be in weddings. And it was throughout the journey. So it was really about when I first started the business has really evolved. And a lot of the journey has been with you, Kelly. You've seen the branding change throughout. So when I first started the business, it was, let's just do weddings. As I then it was like I didn't have the evidence before it started. So I created the business, I created the website, I created the logo, and then effectively I got my first lead that came in. And I think my very first wedding was with an amazing wedding planner called Lydia Loves, and she does lots of weddings. And when I Googled her, she was a really big deal. And she just messaged me saying, look, we've got this job. Can you get involved? And so immediately I was like, whoa, okay, it's like go time. Let's do the thing. Let's do the thing. I'm going to say I'm to do it. And then went in, done the job, and it was awesome. But it wasn't high end luxe client. It was kind of middle of the row. But at that stage in weddings, I didn't really know the difference between your mid client to luxe client. And it's been throughout the journey, which has evolved over a couple of years, that I started to realize the difference between the varying levels of clients. And of course, all weddings are spectacular, but you do have these kind of different price ranges, and they do require a different type of messaging and a different type of show up really within the business. And it was when I started doing one or two weddings that I started to evolve the brand from being just a wedding business to being a luxury wedding business.
I love that. And so many people listening will be inspired by that, because how many wedding pros want to move their businesses through those levels? And it does take the branding and the messaging and understanding the different clients. So I love that. Has your business growth and success been linear? So have you gone just straight like that, or has there been ups and downs and challenges along the way?
Absolutely, loads of challenges, and the highs can be high and the lows can be lows. But what I've learned throughout my all of my years in business, not only necessarily in the wedding space, is that you don't learn a lot from the successes. You learn a lot from the failures, right? So it's often in those times that something goes wrong in the business or is a challenge that you learn to be able to deal with that and then move it forward. So one, it doesn't happen again. Two, you're like, wow, that's a massive growth piece. For example, we did a huge wedding last year, and while I had my separate teams, we went off and done an international wedding. I had a UK wedding here. The UK wedding, we did all the things that we normally do, hit all the buttons, did all the planning. The client journey was all the same as what it wasn't, but I wasn't physically on that job. I had somebody else lead it. Some sort of issue happened within that job. I think the client wasn't 100% happy, which very rarely happens within the business, and it threw up some challenges. That client then left a really like terrible review, and of course I was immediately heartbroken because our businesses are really personal to us, and it's not like we're just a logo. So I took that so personal, but that just, rather than being like, oh, I'm just going to cry about it, I took the learning out of it and saying, okay, so how can I ensure this doesn't happen again to this client, because her expectations were wildly over the top. And I guess the staff member, the lesson I'd learned was, well, perhaps I hadn't trained enough, because in the end of the day, the buck has to stop with you. So you can't put blame somewhere else. You have to very much be like, how do I learn from that? So it's roller coasters, it's ups and downs all the times. And 1 minute you can be on a high and have loads of leads coming in, and then you go for a bit of a period where like, oh, I haven't got any leads coming in, what's happening? And you'll do a little panic, but then you just learn and you grow through it.
Thank you so much for sharing that example of the wedding where there was a challenge and you had to learn from that, because I think especially in our industry we try to hide anything that might be going wrong. We don't discuss it with our peers, or have you found a safe space? Do you have support where you can share these challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when that did happen, I remember coming into the members area on the group. It might have been an office hours, and I was like, Kelly and everybody, this has happened. And I had across the board 5-star reviews. And then this particular client left a 1-star review, and the words in it were wildly not wasn't what happened, and it was a 1-star review. But just reading that, those black and white words on paper, it was like, oh my god, this makes me sad. But what I came away from that, of course I was upset and went back to the team and said, what's happened? But actually speaking to you guys in the group, it was very much like people have said, look, that I shared the review and everyone was like, well, look, this just sounds like somebody that's really disgruntled. And when I went away and done some research, I'd found out that couple had done that with a few other suppliers, and then I didn't take it so personally. And some people in the group were saying, well, look, respond to it in this way. And I managed to move forward from it. It's still a little bit of a bugbear. I carry it a bit. I'm like, oh, but yeah, it's okay.
I love that phrase, we win or we learn. I try to always live by that, and I think you do too. So either we're winning, it's successful, everything's going well, or we learn from it. And so
Yeah,
many people just get knocked down, don't they? And then they just
yeah.
don't get back up again. But I think something about you and all the businesses you've had and your now amazing success is because you deal with it, you keep getting back up, and you look for that learning. And I think that's a real credit to the way you run your business.
Okay.
What's something you love about what you do and managing your teams and the business you have now? What's something you really love?
Well, the more and more the business grows, the more and more I seem to love it. And the more and more, and particularly in this space in weddings, I've just turned 40. I've been in business for a really long time. And my other business I ran for 10 years. There's not another space or business or environment that I've loved more than being in weddings. It's the actual doing of the weddings, but also the networking piece, the people that I've met through it. It's just like we've kind of got this sort of secret like infinity. It's like a little fight club. We're all together and we all kind of know what when you talk about stories and stuff and you're like, oh yeah, I know what you mean. And when you go to conferences and speakers, it's just like a real fun eclectic mix of people that are basically living out their own dreams by providing other people's dreams. And that's what I love about it so much. It's awesome.
And you've given so many nuggets of wisdom and advice, even just in our conversation over this last few minutes. But if there was one piece of business advice that you've either learned or heard, what would you share? If someone's listening to this now, what's that kind of top thing that you always come back to?
So for me, because I've set up businesses from like literally scale businesses from just a logo, just a domain name, what I would say is we tend to overestimate like the timeline, and we don't niche down enough. And I think we can get really, really overwhelmed and be like, oh God, this is a really scary place to be, and then we get overwhelmed and we don't take action. I think what's really, really important is that we really try to just look at one or two steps ahead and really do good at the initial thing. So if we're looking at the website, really, really get into that website and look at, how it's, like what you do in terms of when we go into office hours and all the things, like we really, really look at every single stage, because it's better to be proactive than reactive. And then if you're at the beginning stages, and if you're at the scaling stage, make sure that you've kind of got all the foundations in place first, and then scale slowly so that you're being a master at every level.
I love that. And actually, I'm going to pull another piece from you there as well, because you are obviously scaling and you have built your team. If there's a wedding pro now who's beginning to build team and beginning
Yeah.
to hand things over, it's a really hard first step, isn't it?
Yeah.
To trust
Yeah.
other people in the business. And I see so many wedding pros not grow because they can't trust anyone else. Could you share a little bit of wisdom on how you manage that? Because it's hard to hand it over.
Yeah. So absolutely. And that's one of the biggest issues I've had in all my business. But I think, again, it's a mindset piece where you have to, in order to scale, you have to start to trust people. But of course, to do that, you have to let go of the reins a bit. So if you know all the areas in your business, for example, if you introduce like a CRM system, or you have your email templates, and you can, and you're really well versed at doing those things, teaching somebody else to do that is easy. But that's one of the things that I'm potentially still working on, even in my business as it scales. So I think having things automatically run for you, ensuring that, for example, if your website reads exactly as it needs to, and you've got FAQs, and you've got a downloadable send out that you can say, oh, these are some of the questions that you might want. And in my first email send out, I do a video link to a video that we've sent out, showing a wedding and what we do. People can see it visually. So if you do all those sort of things, it sort of lessens the work along the way. But as I say, every day I'm thinking, I think you did, Kelly, you were on a hitched the hitch thing yesterday, the webinar, and I caught your thing, and I was like, oh, lovely. But it was some things in that, even being 3, 4, 5 years into the wedding industry, you constantly are growing, and you think, that's a good idea, I should do that. That's a good idea, I should do that. So it's about just introducing these things, and the more you do that, the better the business will grow, and the foundations will be there.
I love that. And I think that there's a real clear mindset between people who are looking for what I can do and how I can stand out, and people who are on the other side saying, I can't do that. It won't work for me. That's not going to work. And I can see the success of the people who think like yourself, looking for, there's another little thing that I can add into what I'm doing. So you've mentioned T&L and office hours a few times there. If anybody's listening to our conversation, they're kind of having a little sniff around our members area and thinking, should I join? What would you say to them? What would be your advice?
Absolutely. I mean, I'd say if you're in this space and you're in the weddings, you need a community. Like, you need those people, because for me, I've got people that I know that are in business, but for often, I'm having dinner with my partner and I'll start talking about something and he'll be like, a glazed look will come over. You need to have those people in your space, because you need to soundboard, because being an entrepreneur or running a business as a solopreneur or whatever, it can be so lonely. And the amount of times I've gone in the group and be like, oh guys, and for example, in a couple of weeks' time, I'm doing a mini photo shoot with one of the photographers that's from T&L, and they're doing a brand shoot, and they reached out and said, look, hey, I'm in this space, I'm doing this, does anyone need any pro pictures? Now that normally would cost me loads of time to organize, probably £450 plus to do it, organize a venue. This is like no time spent, I'm going to get 15 pictures from said photographer, and it just works. It's having that community of people, and also being able, you've got so much experience within the wedding industry. My website looks the way it looks because of the work I've done with you, and you saying, well, change just small things, from changing my logo to pink and blue footprints to now black and gold. It's luxury, the typography, all of those things have happened from being within the members area. And it's just like having wedding besties.
I love that, wedding besties. And I know you're always open to connecting with wedding industry professionals, venues, planners, suppliers. If people ever listen to this conversation, they're really inspired by you and they want to connect, where's the best platform for them to find you?
Yeah, sure. So through our website, which again, through lots of SEO workers, ranks really well on Google. So you could just potentially do a test and type in wedding childcare, and hopefully we'll come up the top, depending on what location you're in. Or Little Wedding Creche, the Little Wedding Creche, or on Instagram at the Little Wedding Creche. And yeah, so open to doing blogs and chatting all things wedding childcares, the do's and the don'ts. And yeah, love to connect with professionals across the board, suppliers and venues.
And I know you've also recently begun speaking
Yeah.
and sharing at different events, which again is another incredible growth for you and your business. And so, if other wedding professionals are looking for someone to come onto their Instagram, for example, and chat about how that works for their brides or grooms, that would be something you'd be open to, I imagine.
I love it. You can't get me to stop talking about anything to do with weddings and business. It's like anytime you do something, I'm like, I'm in. I want to do it. It's
Love
like I don't know if I've just got a big ego or something, but I just love sharing. I'm just super
that.
open to that, and I just love connecting with everyone. So yeah.
Perfect. So, guys, if you've enjoyed this conversation, you're inspired by Kimberly's story, then go and find her on Instagram, The Little Wedding Creche, shoot her a DM and connect with her. Kimberly, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
your
so
time. I've
much.
really enjoyed our
You're
conversation.
welcome. And join TNL. It's awesome.